Okay, everyone. So this is obviously getting split into a second part. So we're still on chapter 3. We're still learning about research ethics. However, we're in the final section. So this should just be a couple of minutes long. So this third section of chapter 3, research ethics, is about putting ethics into practice. Okay, so implementing these tools that we have just learned in sections 1 and in section 3 and putting them into practice. So in this section, we're going to describe several strategies for identifying and minimizing risk and deception in psychological research. And also, Paul Price is going to show us how to create, through informed consent and debriefing procedures, how to include consent forms, okay? So lack of awareness and understanding of an ethical standard is not itself a defense to a charge of unethical conduct. This is why the very first thing that we need to do as new researchers, as students who are new to the field, is to know and accept ethical responsibilities. So we need to know the histories of ethics, the histories of ethics in psychology, etc. At minimum, this means reading and understanding the relevant standards of the APA Ethics Code, distinguishing minimal risk from at-risk research, so knowing the difference between not just those two, but the 3 levels of research, and knowing the specific policies and procedures of one's institution, including how to prepare and submit research protocol for IRB approval. As one prepares a study or a research project, you need to be able to identify and minimize risks specifically to participants, okay? So first, the way that we should start is to start by listing all of the risks, including the risk of physical and psychological harm and violations of confidentiality that may arise. So list the risks of harms, psychological or physical, and any risk of confidentiality breach that might arise. List the risks. I would even say list the benefits as well, okay? For example, and this example is taken directly from our textbook, one student researcher wanted to test people's sensitivity to violent images by showing them gruesome photographs of a crime scene and incident. Because she specifically was an emergency medical technician, however, she greatly underestimated how disturbing the images were to people. Okay, so imagine being a emergency technician, medical technician, being exposed to gruesome pictures constantly and images and scenes constantly. And now imagine putting yourself in the role of a regular civilian who doesn't have exposure to those images. What kind of risks does exposing that regular civilian to images, what kind of risks might arise? Okay, so weigh those risks, okay? Once the risks are identified, one can often reduce or even sometimes eliminate many of them. One way is to modify the research design, change it up, okay? The second way is to minimize risk is to use a pre-screening procedure to identify and eliminate participants who are at high risk. This can be done through informed consent processes. Pre-screening can also involve collecting data to identify and also eliminate, at-risk participants, sensitive populations, etc. Okay. A third way to minimize risk is to take active steps to maintain confidentiality. One should keep signed consent forms separately from any data that one collects, and in such a way that no individual name can be linked to his or her specific data, okay? Deception can take a variety of forms, not all of which involve actively misleading participants. It is also deceptive to allow participants to make incorrect assumptions. So examples of deceptive behaviors could be about what will be on a memory test, for example, or simply withholding information about the full design or purpose of the study is misleading. It's deceptive. It is best to identify and minimize all forms of deception from the beginning. Once the risks of the research have been identified and minimized, one needs to weigh them against the benefits. This goes back to the beginning of the chapter, okay? Specifically one of the moral principles. This requires identifying all the benefits, okay? So it requires identifying all the benefits to the research participants, benefits to the field, the scientific community, and benefits to society generally must be considered. If the research poses minimal risk, then even a small benefit to participants, science, or society is generally considered enough to justify it. If it poses more than minimal risk, then there should be more benefits, okay? Once the research design is finalized, one needs to create an informed consent and debriefing procedures. How do you do that? You start by deciding whether informed consent is necessary according to the APA standards, specifically Part 8, Part 5 of Standard 8. If informed consent is necessary, there are several things you need to do. The first thing you need to do is recruit participants, provide them with as much information about the study as well. This will allow those who might find the study objectionable in some way to avoid it, to decline participating in it, etc. Second, prepare a script of a set of talking points to help explain the study. Third, create an informed consent form that covers all points in Standard 8 that participants can read and sign after the study is described to them. Okay. Debriefing is similar to informed consent in that one cannot necessarily expect participants to read and understand written debrief forms. During debriefing, the researcher should reveal the research question and full design of the study. Okay. The next step is to get institutional approval for research based on the specific policies and procedures that that institution has. This will generally require writing a protocol that describes the purpose of the study, the research design, the procedures, the risks and benefits, the steps taken to minimize the risk, and informed consent and debriefing procedures. Lastly, you need to concern yourself with ethics. Concern with ethics should not end when the study receives institutional approval. So once you get IRB approval, that doesn't mean that ethics is thrown out the window. It now becomes important to stick to the protocol, submit the protocol that was submitted, or to seek additional approval for anything other than a minor change. During the research, one should monitor the participants for unanticipated reactions and seek feedback from them during debriefing. Finally, one must maintain one's integrity always through the publication process and beyond and prior, okay? So the takeaway points specifically from this section is that it's your responsibility as a researcher, it's your responsibility in your research to know and to accept the ethical responsibilities. There are several concrete steps that you can take to minimize risk and deception in your research. These things can include making changes to your research design, pre-screening to identify and eliminate high-risk participants, and providing participants with as much information as possible during the informed consent and debriefing periods. Your ethical responsibilities continue beyond the IRB approval. You need to monitor participants' reactions, be alert for potential violations of confidentiality, and maintain scholarly integrity through the publication process, okay? So that's just a section because the video was kind of cut off that I'm just including. And yeah, these are things that you take into practice, take into consideration when you are working on your research question for this week. So this week, here are the following things that you need to do. 1, read chapter 3. 2, listen to the lecture if you must, right? If you want to. And I do encourage you guys to listen to it as well. 3, there is a quiz on chapter 3 that's due on Friday at 11:59 p.m. The quizzes are always due at 11:59 p.m., regardless of the week that we're on. They're due on Fridays at 11:59 p.m. And then the last thing that you have due this week is the assignment 1A. So assignment 1A, there is going to be more detail to assignment 1A above this lecture in the Blackboard. And I do give you an example as to how to write a research question. Take that example. Take the information you have received from chapter 2 specifically as to how to formulate your research question and get started. So assignments, discussion boards, they're always due on Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. So assignment 1A is due on Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Sound good, guys? Okay, so I will talk to you guys in the next lecture. Bye.